You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter @RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Sports fans, welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am the Jacob Valk, except no imitation. Obviously, I've got to start with the Super Bowl. Haven't talked about it in the lead up to the big game. And there's a reason for that. I don't want to beat things into the ground. I don't want to repeat myself a million times. I like to save all the Super Bowl stuff for one show, the Friday before the Super Bowl. And that's all the NFL stuff I'm going to talk about today. There are other stories I want to talk about, but none of them pertain to the NFL. I'm not going to get into the awards. I'm not going to get into the bad Hall of Fame class. I just want this to be solely dedicated to the Super Bowl when it comes to the NFL Valk Talk. And I'm really excited about this Super Bowl. I can honestly say I'm more excited about this Super Bowl than I've been about a Super Bowl in a long time. Like, think about it. Buccaneers, Chiefs, how excited can I get about seeing Tom Brady for the umpteenth time in the Super Bowl? Chiefs, Niners? I wasn't a big Kyle Shanahan fan. I wasn't a big Jimmy Garoppolo fan. Broncos, Panthers? To see an old Peyton Manning? I mean, it was his final game. That was exciting, but other than that, It's been a while since I've been this excited about a Super Bowl. It's very easy to get into this if you're a football fan. If you're not a football fan, yeah, you're probably going to have a tough time getting into this. You know the name Mahomes, you know the name Rodgers, you know the name Brady. Is Joe Burrow at that level? Maybe for football fans he is, but for non-football fans, I don't think he's there. And Matthew Stafford certainly isn't. I mean, what's the non-football fan gonna do? Is the non-football fan gonna watch the game for the commercials? Commercials that are already available online? And a halftime show that, if you're not a fan of rap and hip-hop, you're going to have a really tough time watching? Or is that person going to watch the Olympics? Is that person going to do other things while the football fans in his or her family go out to a party? I know my mom's going to watch the Olympics. She's not a football fan. There's not a lot of juice here for the non-football fan. But for the football fan, whether it's the casual one or the diehard one, there are a ton of great stories here. And it all starts with the quarterbacks. Joe Burrow is on his way to having a really good rookie season, but he suffers that devastating injury. Everyone thinks he's going to come back at 100%, but I think there was that sliver of doubt. How great is this guy going to be? I mean, realize, he's a one-hit wonder coming out of LSU. He's with the Bengals. Just came off a big injury. How good is Zach Taylor? What's this kid going to be? Well, we know the answer now. One of the 10 best quarterbacks in the NFL. This guy has done something that has never been done before. He's the first ever first overall pick to lead his team to a Super Bowl within his first 2 years in the NFL. You know, it's kind of funny. We say about all these rookie quarterbacks, the best thing that they do is become sophomore quarterbacks. Give them time. They're not going to hit the ground running. Let them take their lumps. Well, wait a second. If you're a Jaguars fan, or a Jets fan, or a Niners fan, or a Bears fan, or a Patriots fan, I think it's easy to point to the Bengals and say, wait a minute, why can't we do that? I mean, is this just a once-in-a-generation type thing, or is this the norm? I mean, in the old days, rookie quarterbacks never saw the field. They had time to develop and marinate. They don't have that time anymore. Burrow didn't, Lawrence didn't, Wilson didn't, Jones didn't. Justin Fields saw a ton of action his rookie year. Same thing with Tua. Same thing with Herbert. Same thing with Kyler Murray. There are some players that break their sports. Like Steph Curry broke basketball. Patrick Mahomes is breaking the NFL. Lamar Jackson has even broken the NFL a little bit. A guy like Malik Willis is not a first-round pick in anyone's eyes before Lamar Jackson. Now, some people are saying Malik Willis is the best quarterback in this draft. I think it's very possible that we say the same thing about Joe Burrow. Here's a guy who in his second year makes the Super Bowl as the first overall pick. He literally led us from worst to first in 2 years. There have been other second-year quarterbacks to make the Super Bowl. None of them have been first overall picks. In fact, most of them just landed in absolutely perfect spots. And granted, elevated their teams, but it's fair to wonder, would they have been that great early on if things had broken differently? Dan Marino's rookie year was 1983. The Dolphins made the Super Bowl in 84. What did the Dolphins do in 82? Make the Super Bowl with David Woodley as their quarterback. What happened to make Kurt Warner a Hall of Famer? The Rams hired Mike Martz as their offensive coordinator. All due respect to Kurt Warner, he's not a Hall of Famer if not for Mike Martz. Does Colin Kaepernick get to the Super Bowl if not for Jim Harbaugh? The answer is no. Even a guy like Russell Wilson, we think of him as elevating the Seahawks to another stratosphere. And yes, he did, but the Seahawks weren't bad before he got there. They made the playoffs in 2010. They won the NFC West. They had the Beastquake game. They had Pete Carroll as the head coach. Wilson landed in the perfect spot. Now Joe Burrow landed in a great spot also. Okay, I'm not trying to disparage the Bengals by any stretch. Joe Mixon is really talented. Tyler Boyd is really talented. They did a great job in surrounding Burrow with really good wide receivers and T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, and CJ Uzomah's really good, and Zach Taylor's a really good head coach. But without Burrow, the Bengals are nothing. That's just fact. Look at what they did without him last year. Look at what happened in the Andy Dalton era. Look at what happened in the Carson Palmer era. Joe Burrow took a roster with really good players on it, but made it great. And now he has them one win away from their first ever Super Bowl. Do you remember when I said before the Raiders game? I said that, like it or not, Burrow and these Bengals are carrying the burden of all the Bengals teams of old. The Bengals teams that lost 6 wildcard games in 7 years. All the Bengals teams that failed to even make the playoffs. The David Shula Bengals, the Bruce Kozlik Bengals, the Dick LeBeau Bengals. When the Bengals stepped foot on that field against the Raiders, they were carrying that ginormous burden. It didn't matter to Burrow. He's just a super chill guy. Doesn't let anything faze him. Didn't let the bright lights at LSU faze him. It just doesn't seem like he's rattled. I mean, his 2 years in the NFL, he has played behind garbage offensive lines. And I'll go more into that in a little bit. But for the vast majority of rookie quarterbacks, playing behind a bad offensive line dooms them. They are destined to fail. Not Joe Burrow. You know what this guy says? That's all well and good. Just trust me. I'll lead us to victory. And afterwards, I'm going to put on my cool sunglasses, I'm going to smoke a cigar, and we can listen to Kid Cudi afterwards. I mean, here's a guy who has led the Bengals to 3 incredibly close wins in these playoffs. They beat the Raiders by a touchdown. They beat the Titans by a field goal. They engineer one of the greatest comebacks in NFL history against the Kansas City Chiefs to win by a field goal in overtime. How many other young quarterbacks out there that if you put them in the exact same spot, the same roster, the same coach, the same everything, the result is different? Joe Burrow is just built different. And I'm really happy for Bengals fans that they finally have their guy. Maybe Dalton and Palmer weren't bad quarterbacks. They weren't. No question about that. But did they ever get you anywhere near this point? No. Carson Palmer was a Bengal for 7 years. He only made the playoffs twice. Andy Dalton was a Bengal for 9 years. Never won a playoff game. In Joe Burrow's 2nd year, he is already better than both those guys put together. Seriously, Burrow could retire a week from now, and he'd already have a better career than Carson Palmer and Andy Dalton put together. Meanwhile, on the other side of the equation, you have Matthew Stafford, another first overall pick, but someone who has taken a very different path than Burrow. Does good things at Georgia. Not saying he didn't, but never won a national title, never had a perfect season, never had anything like that. Goes to the Lions, and what did I say about landing in a good system? Stafford didn't. Jim Schwartz was a terrible coach, had 4 losing seasons in his 5 years in Detroit. They bring in Jim Caldwell. Caldwell doesn't do a terrible job, but certainly doesn't elevate the Lions. The Lions lost 2 wildcard games in Caldwell's 4 years there. Then they have the Matt Patricia era. It fails miserably. Matthew Stafford entered his 13th year in the NFL this year. He had never won a playoff game. He had a 74-90-1 career record as a starter. He had only made 1 Pro Bowl. You looked at him and you thought, here's a really, really, really good quarterback. Maybe some people would use the word great to describe him. But great quarterbacks win in the playoffs, right? I mean, Matthew Stafford's legacy was going to be that of a guy like Phillip Rivers. Maybe a little less than Rivers. I mean, Rivers made 8 Pro Bowls, but no playoff success despite being a very talented quarterback. Then he goes to the Rams and everything changes. And Stafford proves that he can win in this league. Engineers the epic late drive against the Buccaneers. Gets the Rams past a really, really good Niners defense. How quickly the narrative changes. Now everyone's saying, yeah, Stafford can win in this league. He's a great quarterback. Future Hall of Famer, all that good stuff. You gotta love it. You gotta love how quickly people's views can change. And I've said this before. I'll say it again. If you're a team that's looking to go for it, if you're a team that you believe in your heart of hearts has what it takes to make a Super Bowl run, what we now know is you need to do everything in your power to upgrade at the quarterback position. Look, I remember when the Stafford for Goff trade went down. It wasn't that long ago. It was Stafford for Goff, 2 firsts, and a third. And I said at the time, is the gap between Stafford and Goff equivalent to that of 2 firsts and a third? I said no. I mean, I was really high on Goff. I'm still high on Goff. I still like Goff. Honestly, didn't have a bad season in Detroit. Not as good as Stafford, by any stretch. But he still completed 67.2% of his passes, which is actually the same completion percentage as Stafford. Threw for over 3,200 yards. 19 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. He missed 3 games. I still like Goff, but he's not as good as Stafford. Stafford has made the Rams more lethal than Jared Goff ever did. I mean, we know that the Rams went all in this year. Mortgaging the future for Stafford, bringing in Odell Beckham. All the win now moves for guys like Von Miller and Jalen Ramsey and guys like that. But how will it be worth it? There's only one answer. The Rams need to win a Super Bowl. Does it need to be this year? Technically, no. It can be next year. You just need to have this win now core in place. But don't forget, Jared Goff had the Rams in the Super Bowl a few years ago. Was not good in that game by any stretch, but the Rams were still there. It doesn't matter if you only score 3 points and lose, or if you score 30 points and lose. Matthew Stafford needs to win a Super Bowl with the Rams for that trade to work out. People said that at the time of the trade. I'm pretty sure I said it also. It's still true. In order for that trade to work out, in order for the gamble to pay off, the Rams need to win. And obviously you'd like it to be this year, because you have no guarantee if you're going to be back. But I just don't want people to think if the Rams lose this year, that's it. The experiment's a failure. Blah, blah, blah. No. The Rams have a win-now core that will be capable of winning next year. Will they be back in the Super Bowl next year? Who knows? But it's not this year or bust. But I'll put a finer point on this. If you have a roster that can win now, but you have room to improve at quarterback, you think about teams like the Tennessee Titans, the Philadelphia Eagles, the Washington Commanders, the Minnesota Vikings, the New Orleans Saints. What we now know is, in order to win in this league, you need to pursue any and all upgrades at quarterback. Even a team like the Denver Broncos, if you have the opportunity to get a guy like Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson or Deshaun Watson, a superstar quarterback, you've got to do it. You can't say, no, we have this quarterback, he's good enough to get us into the playoffs, and we'll let the chips fall where they may. No, that doesn't work anymore. Now you need to go all in on pursuing an upgrade at quarterback. That's the lesson that we've learned from the Rams this year. Now, there were 3 really interesting matchups in this game. The first is the quarterback duel, but that's the case about any Super Bowl. The second is the Bengals' horrific O-line going up against the Rams' excellent D-line. You remember when I said about Joe Burrow working magic with a bad O-line? That's still true, obviously, but he's never gone up against Aaron Donald before. I don't care who you are. If you have Aaron Donald running towards you, that's scary. That can force you into making very bad decisions. But it's not just Donald, though. It's certainly Von Miller also. A'Shawn Robinson, Leonard Floyd, Greg Gaines. How is the Bengals' anemic O-line, an O-line that according to Pro Football Focus only has one player on it, Jonah Williams, with an overall grade higher than 62 in these playoffs, gonna do against this great Rams pass rush? You're gonna need to keep in extra blockers. Joe Mixon's gonna be asked to block more. Certainly CJ Uzomah is going to be asked to block more. Drew Sample will too. You can't trust this Rams O-line of Jonah Williams, Quinton Spain, Trey Hopkins, Hakeem Adeniji, and Isaiah Prince to go up against this Rams pass rush by themselves. They just don't have what it takes. So that is going to limit what Burrow can do a little bit. Is that a death blow for the Bengals? Certainly not. The Bengals have one of the best wide receiver trios in the NFL. If not the best. Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, and T. Higgins. So if Burrow just throws it to those three guys the whole game, you're okay with that. Is it ideal? No, but it's not the end of the world. I mean, the Rams are in a similar spot too. Tyler Higbee's a little banged up, so both teams aren't going to be able to use their tight ends as much as they'd probably like to. I'll say this, though. CJ Uzomah blocking this great Rams pass rush while not being at 100%, that does scare me. Nothing against Uzomah. Good blocker. But if the Bengals are going to have any chance of slowing down this Rams pass rush, they need everyone at 100%. They need everyone pushing in the right direction. They can't have any loose ends. They just can't afford it. But going back to Higbee for a second, I don't think his injury is going to affect the Rams too much. I mean, I was really impressed with Kendall Blanton in the NFC title game. He had 5 catches for 57 yards. Give the Rams a ton of credit for having that depth. The Bengals don't at tight end. Drew Sample had just 1 catch for 4 yards. If you're looking for an X factor in this game, it could be Kendall Blanton. I mean, realistically, it wouldn't even surprise me if the Rams made a concerted effort to get Blanton out there a lot. Maybe 2 tight end sets, maybe some 1 tight end sets where Blanton's in there over Higbee just to manage the injury a little bit. Sort of keep the Bengals defense on their toes. What tight end is going to be out there? You can do that. I wouldn't mind that. And that plays into another really important element of this game. Lou Anarumo's in-game adjustments. Why did the Bengals beat the Chiefs? What was the seminal reason? The seminal reason was Patrick Mahomes falling apart in the second half and overtime. Why did he fall apart? Because Lou Anarumo adjusted his defense, made Mahomes see things that weren't there, rushed guys who Mahomes didn't think he was going to rush. He kept Mahomes uncomfortable. That's how you beat Patrick Mahomes. You confuse him. If you can confuse him, you've got a great chance of winning. And I'll say this, that's true about a lot of quarterbacks. I mean, think about it. How many interceptions have we seen thrown because the quarterback thought the defender was going to do one thing, but he does another thing? How many fumbles have we seen caused by a blitzer that the quarterback just doesn't anticipate? Same thing with sacks. You know that Sean McVay is going to throw the kitchen sink at Anarumo. You know he's going to do a bunch of different things. You know there's going to be a lot of motion. You know there's going to be plays designed for Cooper Kupp, plays designed for Odell Beckham, plays designed for either Tyler Higbee or Kendall Blanton. How will Anarumo keep up? That is the question. If the Bengals defense cannot keep up with the Rams offense, it's going to be a really long night for Bengals fans. Now on to the third interesting matchup. Sean McVay versus Zach Taylor. Zach Taylor owes everything to Sean McVay. Literally everything. Taylor was a quarterbacks coach for the Miami Dolphins. He became their interim offensive coordinator in 2015. That was a disastrous season for the Dolphins. They went 6-10. Joe Philbin gets fired after losing to the Jets in London. I mean, that season was so bad for Taylor that he went to college. He became the offensive coordinator for the Cincinnati Bearcats. Then when Sean McVay took over the Rams, he picked Taylor, in essence, out of obscurity. Taylor and McVay had never worked together before. They had no obvious connection to each other. But McVay hired him to be his assistant wide receivers coach. Then when Greg Olsen leaves to go to the Raiders to be their offensive coordinator, Taylor gets promoted to quarterbacks coach. The Rams make the Super Bowl. Goff has a great season, makes his second straight Pro Bowl. Throws for over 4,600 yards, throws for 32 touchdowns. And the Bengals hired him to be their head coach. Zach Taylor is not Bengals head coach without Sean McVay hiring him out of Cincinnati. I'm not saying that Taylor would have stayed in Cincinnati if McVay didn't hire him. Someone else may have plucked him out of there so he could be part of his staff. But without McVay making him quarterbacks coach, and without Jared Goff having that great season, and coming within 1/4 of a Super Bowl win, Zach Taylor is not Bengals head coach. Make no mistake about it, he owes everything to Sean McVay. Literally everything. the chess match that you're going to see unfold between these two head coaches is going to be great. You know Mcvay is going to throw some different looks at the Bengals. All right, I mentioned that. But Taylor's probably going to throw some different looks at the Rams. He has to. These two coaches know each other too well. Realistically, this Super Bowl could come down to one play where either the Rams or Bengals do something that the opposing defense just doesn't see coming. Some other things that you gotta keep an eye on. The Rams have had a mediocre running game really all throughout these playoffs. I understand that they ran roughshod over the Cardinals, but they went up big early in that game. They were up 21-0 before a quarter and a half had elapsed. So, of course, they're going to look to run the ball a lot. It's tough to read a lot into that. But against the Buccaneers, Akers was dreadful. Only averaged 2 yards a carry, fumbled the ball away twice. He nearly cost the Rams that game, don't kid yourself. And against the Niners, Akers wasn't great. He averaged 3.7 yards per carry. He had 13 carries for 48 yards. Sonny Michel had 10 carries for 16 yards. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens in this sense. Are the Rams going to look to integrate the running game into their offense? Or are they going to say, you know what, we haven't been able to really have it work recently. We want Matthew Stafford to have as many opportunities as possible to win us this game. I think he's earned it. Cooper Kupp too. It really wouldn't stun me if the Rams only ran the ball like 15 times in this game. Now you may be thinking, well, if the Rams' offense is that one-dimensional, it plays into the Bengals' favor, right? Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that you can drop a lot of guys back into coverage. I mean, we saw the Buccaneers do that last year against Mahomes, and it worked to perfection. But no, in the sense that it's next to impossible to contain Cooper Kupp. It's next to impossible to contain OBJ. And it's going to be really tough to contain Tyler Higbee and or Kendall Blanton. Sometimes football is really simple. Sometimes you don't need to overthink things. We don't have a great running game. We have a great passing game. So we're going to chuck it. That's okay. You can do that. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Evan Mcpherson. The guy who sent the Bengals to the AFC title game and the Super Bowl. It's really rare to find a young quarterback that can come in and hit the ground running like Burrow has and not be fazed by the bright lights. That's what makes Burrow really special, his cool, calm demeanor. But it's exceptionally rare to find a kicker that's not fazed by the bright lights, that doesn't wilt under pressure. Evan Mcpherson has been nothing short of sensational in these playoffs. He hasn't missed a kick. He is 12 for 12 on field goal tries. He is 4 for 4 on extra point tries. This is honestly one of the best postseason runs that a kicker has ever had. It's right up there with guys like Adam Vinatieri and Jim O'Brien. You don't know how much of an impact Mcpherson is going to be able to have in this game, but you know that Zach Taylor trusts him completely. If it's a long field goal, like a 50-yard field goal or longer, he's going to send Mcpherson out there. You cannot overlook special teams. Teams that do so, do it at their own peril. Take a look at what happened to the Packers. Their special teams unit was abysmal this year. They're going to be watching this game from their couch. Or maybe on their friend's couch, depending on what their Super Bowl party situation is looking like. Maybe they'll even go out to eat with some friends. That's what I'm doing. I'm going out to a local restaurant with my father and some friends. Should be fun. That's what I've done the last few years, with the exception of last year, obviously. I really like it. It's fun. One thing that I hate doing is watching the Super Bowl by myself at my house. Even if it's with my father, on Super Bowl Sunday, you want to interact with other people. You just do. You want to turn to the person next to you and say, "Oh my God, what a crazy play." It's nothing against my father. Alright, I love him, obviously, but I would rather watch the Super Bowl with numerous people. With all that being said, I think this is going to be a great Super Bowl. I think these two teams are really evenly matched. I don't think one team is obviously better than the other. I think this is going to be a great Super Bowl, much better than last year's. And I'm having a really tough time making a pick for it. Like, people have asked me, who do you think is going to win the Super Bowl? I've been hedging. I know that's terrible to say, but it's the truth. I could easily see the Bengals winning this, but I could easily see the Rams winning this. But I have given some people an answer. I think what it's really going to come down to is this. The Rams D-line is going to eviscerate this bad Bengals O-line. Even if you're keeping extra blockers in, I don't think it's going to be enough. I think they're going to stifle Joe Mixon. I think they're going to make Burrow's life really tough. I know that the Rams have a bad running game, and I know that Evan Mcpherson can win a football game, not by himself, but you get what I'm trying to say. But all in all, while Lou Anarumo is very capable of making the necessary in-game adjustments, Sean McVay can too. I think he's going to throw a lot of different things at the Bengals here. And I just think it's going to be impossible to prepare for everything, to adjust to everything that you're going to see from the Rams. It wouldn't stun me if the Bengals won. It really wouldn't. But I think the Rams are going to pull this out by a score of 27-21. Alright, now I'll give you some NHL Valk talk. Specifically on the Oilers firing Dave Tippett. Jim Playfair was also canned. To replace them, the Oilers promoted Jay Woodcroft. He was the coach of the Oilers' AHL affiliate, the Bakersfield Condors. And taking over for Playfair is a familiar name to Oilers fans. Dave Manson. Let me tell you, you did not get on Dave Manson's bad side. If you did, you'd be spitting chiclets for a week. And I think this is a good move by the Oilers. I'm not a big Dave Tippett fan. I understand that early in his career he was really successful. Did some good things with the Stars. Did some good things with the Coyotes in the early part of his tenure there. But toward the end, they really struggled. And with the Oilers, Tippett has been dreadful. They lost to an inferior Blackhawks team in the bubble. They got embarrassed by the Jets last year in the playoffs. They got swept. I mean, it's clear that Dave Tippett was never going to lead the Oilers back to the promised land. Will Jay Woodcroft be that guy? Probably not, but I think it's worth trying. I mean, Woodcroft has done some good things in the AHL. The Condors this year are 18-9-7. Last year, the 7 teams in the AHL's Pacific Division played in a tournament to decide who would win the division. The Condors ended up winning that tournament. I think Woodcroft is worth the promotion. And he has some NHL experience, spent a few years with the Red Wings, spent a lot of time with the Sharks, actually spent a few years with the Oilers as an assistant coach. He was brought over by Todd McClellan when he left the Sharks for the Oilers. The thing that's really jarring is this. While the Oilers technically aren't out of the playoff race, they're 6 games behind the Ducks right now for the final wild card spot, and they have 4 games in hand on Anaheim. They certainly face an uphill climb, though. I mean, it wouldn't knock my socks off if the Oilers made the playoffs, but I wouldn't bet the rent on it. Here's the thing. The Oilers are wasting Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. Okay, there's no other way to put it. You know how many playoff rounds those guys have won in the NHL? 1. In 16-17, they beat the Sharks in the first round, then lost to the Ducks in the second round in 7 games. They have only made the playoffs 3 times. These are 2 of the best players in the NHL. Connor McDavid is the best player in the NHL. Leon Draisaitl is top 5. When you have 2 of the 5 best players in the NHL, you've got to make the playoffs, and you've got to be successful in the playoffs. The Oilers simply haven't. They have been disastrous. They have run their team about as poorly as you possibly can. Connor McDavid has been in the NHL for 7 seasons now. You know how many head coaches he's had? 4. McClellan, Ken Hitchcock, Tippett, and now Woodcroft. Hell, I'll do you one better. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins has been in the NHL for 11 years. He's a lifetime Oiler. His first year was 11-12. This is his 8th head coach. Tom Rennie, Ralph Kruger, Dallas Eakins, Todd Nelson, then McClellan, Hitchcock, Tippett, and Woodcroft. Like, the thing is, people in Edmonton say, hey, all we need is a goalie and we'll be fine. We've just gotta improve on Mikko Koskinen and Stuart Skinner and we'll be okay. Are you sure about that? Outside of McDavid, Draisaitl, and Nugent-Hopkins, what great players do you have? Zach Hyman's really good, okay? I like Hyman. Jesse Puljujarvi isn't great. Evan Bouchard is good, okay? Good young defenseman, I like him. I don't think Darnell Nurse really turned into what you expected. Good player, not great. Tyson Barrie was good last year, not good this year. Duncan Keith hasn't been great. Zach Cassian hasn't been that good. Pretty soon, we've got to have some tough conversations about the Edmonton Oilers. They've tried retooling, it hasn't worked. I'm not saying you trade McDavid and Draisaitl, okay? No. I don't want to say that the backlash in trading those two guys would be worse than the backlash that you got from trading Gretzky, but it would be really close. The thing is, though, I think Nugent-Hopkins has to go. I think Darnell Nurse can go. Puljujarvi can go. Hyman can go. You've got to retool this roster because this is another wasted season for two of the best players in the NHL. And the thing is, and this thought hit me last night as I was laying in bed. If this was happening in the NBA, Connor McDavid would have been traded already. Leon Draisaitl would have been traded already. You know that those two guys would pull a James Harden or an Anthony Davis or something like that, and they'd want out. You know it, but these superstar players that are going through some tough sledding in the NHL, they stick with it. Like my father said this to me last night. Jacob, the reason that James Harden got traded twice in 13 months is because the NBA is a player-driven league. You don't see this happen in other leagues. And he's right. He's 100% right. You don't see this happen in baseball. Mike Trout has never wanted out of LA. Aaron Judge has never wanted out of the Bronx. Draisaitl and McDavid are being excellent soldiers. You see it in the NFL a little bit, but certainly not to the extent that you see it in the NBA. Whenever you've seen it in the NFL, it's been justifiable. In the NBA, it's not always justifiable. I'm not just saying this because I'm a Nets fan, but I don't think James Harden wanting out was justifiable. You force a trade to the Nets, then 13 months later, you want out. That's not justifiable. If it was the other way around, if Harden had forced a trade to the Sixers, and the Nets had just traded for him, I would have criticized Harden. I would have been happy that the Nets traded for Harden, but I would have said this is a bad look for him on a global level. And you know what? In this world we live in right now, it's still a bad look for Harden on a global level. This is an issue in the NBA, and we can all agree on this. Players not honoring their contracts. Players not honoring their commitments. If you're a free agent and you don't want to re-sign with your team, okay, that's your right. If James Harden had walked in free agency, fine. That's his right. LeBron James, leaving Cleveland, leaving Miami, leaving Cleveland again, in free agency, that's his right. Forcing trades, acting like a jerk, that doesn't work for me. And it happens in the NBA more than in any other sport. That is a huge issue that needs to be addressed by the league and the Players Association. At the end of the day, if you sign a contract, you need to honor it. That just doesn't happen in the NBA. And it's a joke. It's one of the biggest issues that the NBA has. Speaking of the NBA, there actually was another move that happened that I didn't talk about. There's a reason for that, though. I wanted to keep yesterday solely focused on trades. This is an extension, and it just became official. Dorian Finney Smith signed a 3-year extension with the Mavericks with a 4th-year player option and a trade kicker. The extension is worth $55.5 million. So if you count the player option as the 4th year, we're looking at just under $14 million per year for Finney Smith. And this is an overpay. Dorian Finney Smith is a solid player, good shooter, solid rebounder, good defender, not worth just under $14 million per year. You're trying to retool around Luka. You're admitting defeat on the Porzingis experiment. Okay. But if you're going to do that, you've got to be careful who you surround Luka with. Spencer Dinwiddie? Yeah, great 6th man. I have no problem with that. How much is he going to help Luka? Dorian Finney-Smith getting $14 million per year? I'm not saying he's a bad fit with Luka, but that's an overpay. Alright, that is an egregious overpay. Like I said, Mark Cuban thinks he knows more about basketball than he actually does. He puts money into the team. Good job by him. But he needs to stop being on Shark Tank and focus a little bit more on his basketball team. I don't like this move. I don't think it makes the Mavericks better. I understand that he was a pending free agent. I totally get that. But $14 million per year? Who was in a rush to give Dorian Finney-Smith $14 million per year in free agency? This is a bad move by the Mavericks. I really don't like it. I understand wanting to keep him around, but there had to be a better way to do it than this. There was a really sad death in the baseball world. And that, of course, was Jeremy Giambi, who killed himself on Wednesday by shooting himself in the chest at the age of 47. Firstly, let me just say that if you are in a dark place, that is not a weakness. The weakness is not admitting that to yourself and accepting the fact that you need help. There are a ton of resources that Jeremy Giambi could have utilized, and he didn't. And now, Jason is without his brother. I don't want you to leave your brother or sister or parents or significant other or your kids. If you're in a dark place, please, please, please get the help that you need. Resources are readily available to you. And it's kind of tough to eulogize someone who committed suicide, but I did like Jeremy Giambi. Actually, a pretty important figure in recent baseball history. And you may not realize it, but he actually is. Giambi got his start with the Royals. And in '99, his first taste of extended action, he had .285 with 3 home runs and 34 RBIs. The Royals didn't like him because he didn't have the power that his brother did. But Billy Beane liked him because he got on base. In '99, Giambi had a .373 on-base percentage. So Beane traded Brett Laxton to the Royals, who you don't need to know anything about, for Jeremy Giambi. Now, the brothers Giambi had some really good years in Oakland together. In 2000, Jeremy hit .254 with 10 home runs and 50 RBIs. Jason hit .333 with 43 home runs and 137 RBIs. The Athletics lost to the Yankees in the ALDS in 5 games. The year after that, both Giambis improved. And I know it's kind of weird to talk about another person so much in another person's eulogy, but it's impossible to separate the two Giambis in this case. You can talk about Jason without talking about Jeremy too much. You can't talk about Jeremy without talking about Jason a lot. I'm sorry, that's just the proper way to tell the story. But in '01, Jason Giambi hit .342 with 38 home runs and 120 RBIs. Jeremy Giambi hit .283 with 12 home runs and 57 RBIs. The Yankees and Athletics matched up again in the ALDS. So Billy Beane's Moneyball method was technically working. The Athletics made the playoffs back-to-back years, and obviously they'd go on to make the playoffs in subsequent years. But '01 had a different feel to it. The Athletics went into Yankee Stadium and won the first 2 games. In Game 1, Roger Clemens didn't make it out of the 5th inning. Sterling Hitchcock was really ineffective. Jay Wittisick wasn't much better. The Athletics won 5-3. In Game 2, the Yankees' bats went silent. They wasted a great performance from Andy Pettitte. The Athletics won 2-0. So here are the Yankees, a team that a lot of people were rooting for. Realize, this is a month after 9/11. Game 2 happened on the 1-month anniversary of 9/11. You've got a ton of people rooting for the Yankees, New York's team. And it seems like they're going to get swept in the ALDS. The series goes to Oakland. No one's given the Yankees a shot. Fortunately for them, Mike Mussina pitched an absolute gem. but so did Barry Zito. This was a pitching duel for the ages. Barry Zito blinked first. He gave up a home run to Jorge Posada in the 5th inning to make it 1-0 Yankees. Then, in the bottom of the 7th, Jeremy Giambi came up facing Mussina with 2 men out. He had a first pitch single. So, okay, Giambi gets on base, good for him. He's still not in scoring position. He would get into scoring position very quickly because Terrence Long, in the next at-bat, hit a ball down the right field line. The Yankees' right fielder in that game was Sheen Spencer. Spencer unleashed a bomb to try to nail Jeremy Giambi, who was rounding third. He's headed for home. He wants to tie the game here. Unfortunately for the Yankees, Spencer airmailed 2 cutoff guys, Alfonso Soriano and Tino Martinez. Who was there for the rescue but Derek Jeter? When you think of one play that summarizes Jeter's legacy, it's the flip play. Alright, no one knew what he was doing there. We were just all really happy that he was there, because without him being there, the throw doesn't get to Posada in time. Giambi's safe. The game is tied at 1, and God only knows what happens after that. It wasn't until later that we realized that Jeter did this all year. We just never realized it. It was a Don Zimmer idea to have Jeter run from short to the first base line to be another cutoff guy. Okay, that is a really important moment in recent baseball history. It's the single most memorable play to non-Yankees fans when they think of Derek Jeter. If you're a Yankees fan, you have other memories. Him breaking Lou Gehrig's record for most hits by a Yankee on the 10th anniversary of 9/11. It was a Friday night. I was there. Him hitting his 3,000th hit off of the Rays. A home run into the left field bleachers. Obviously, him diving into the stands against the Red Sox. The speech that he gave after the last game at the old stadium. Him hitting the leadoff home run in 2000. Those moments are not as iconic to non-Yankees fans as the flip play. If Jeter's not there, it's very possible that the Athletics win the ALDS. That was the turning point of that series. And to this day, no one knows why Jeremy Giambi didn't slide. If he slid, who knows if he's safe or out. So if you've been keeping score, Giambi was part of 2 memorable things. Moneyball and the flip play. Not too many people can say that. They are part of 2 big moments in recent baseball history. Give Giambi credit for that. The Yankees win Game 3, 1-0. They destroy the Athletics in Game 4, 9-2. Then in the deciding Game 5, the Athletics kind of fumble the game away. They commit 3 errors. The Yankees win 5-3. After that, Jason Giambi said if you can't beat him, join him. He signed with the Yankees in free agency. I absolutely loved watching Giambi play. Jeremy Giambi stayed with the Athletics for a little bit. but Billy Beane really wanted John Mabry. So he traded Jeremy Giambi to the Phillies for Mabry. Giambi had a good year in 2002. He had .259 with 20 home runs and 45 RBIs. He latched on with the Red Sox in 2003. Really didn't do much for him. Got on base at a good clip, but hit .197. And that was it for Giambi's MLB career. I remember there being some rumblings that the Yankees would look to bring Jeremy Giambi in, have him be reunited with his brother. It obviously never happened, but I vaguely remember there being those rumblings. So look, while I obviously condemn the fact that Jeremy Giambi decided to commit suicide, that's never the answer. It's the coward's way out. It's just a foolish thing to do. Giambi was a part of two really big moments in recent baseball history. Moneyball and the flip play. May he rest in peace. And I mean that. I hope you enjoy the Super Bowl. Hope you watch it with people who care about you. Hope you eat some good food. I think it's going to be a great game, I'll say that. You'll get a New York Islanders show Monday night. Regular episodes of the Jacob Valk Show come your way every weekday afternoon. Until next time, I'm Jacob Valk, and always remember, if you disagree with me, you're wrong.